Okay, anyway, yeah, I'm just clicking through the music that they have on the thing here, just to see what the hell it actually is. But yeah, I none of that is my chosen soundtrack. I can assure you that much. Anyway, it's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 1st of August. Uh, so for all you folks getting ready to head out there to Black Hat, make sure you drink your water. Make sure you don't get fucking wrecked on day one. Be big boys and big girls, and remember, this is a small community, so what you do at Black Hat and those cons will follow you forever, especially if you're a young person and this is your first time going out there. Just, be cautious, take it slow. Vendors will shove drinks down your throat nonstop, so just, be aware of that and be smart, because you don't want to be that you don't want to be that person that we've all run into at Black Hat, DEF CON, and RSA for years on end, that show up and they land, they get off the plane, they don't eat, they don't sleep, they go booze it up, and the next thing you know, they're the ones, on the shared resource page about who got fucked up at Black Hat. So anyway, my 2 cents. You're grown people, do whatever they want. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about some cyber stuff, because supposedly that's what I'm supposed to know things about. And actually, let me cover this first, because I believe in sharing. I think that it's helpful for people to understand some of the technology that's out there, the value of. And if you follow me, like recently I put up a thing where I got selected to volunteer to be part of a full body MRI scan. It was actually really cool, no stress. If you're claustrophobic, I could see why it might be a little bit scary, because you are in that tube for about 30-45 minutes. I fell asleep, just because it's quiet and calm and rhythmic. But I got my results back. So, good for the Cunningham family. There's nothing in the MRIs that say that something is wrong with me. But it was really cool to go in there, get this high-res image done. And I mean, they're super high-res. And they were basically able to find that there was nothing, significantly wrong. I'm a guy over 40, so obviously the prostate was a little bit larger than normal. Big deal. I had a cyst in my shoulder where I've had a bunch of shoulder tears, which is to be known. And some of the discs in my back are a little bit jacked up, which, thank you, Uncle Sam. So the good thing is there was no aneurysms. There was no really big issues. There was nothing major. And now I know. So I think that if I could suggest, if you've got the money that goes into your FSA or to whatever else, my 2 cents, and I'm going to do this, is I'm going to put some money away every month for the next couple of years. And 2 years from now, when I'm up for my next MRI scan, I'm going to go get it, because then I have high-res images. It's been looked at. And the other thing that was really neat about this particular one was they took my images and compared them to tens of thousands of other images. So it wasn't just a radiologist that's kind of sitting there and looking at things and making their best guess on what's going on. They literally ran a machine learning program to come back and say, of all the imagery that we took, because it's super high res, is there anything in here that's worth detecting? They actually even found, and I wasn't aware that this is a common thing for people over 40, a 5 millimeter white spot in my brain. Now, apparently this is super common, because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, what is that? It's super common. But the thing is, they saw it in this scan, and they literally tell you in this scan, when you go back in a couple of years, if they see more of these, you're getting in line with where there might be a cluster problem. There could be an area where there's an aneurysm developing, those types of things. So preventative healthcare with really good results is better than reactive. I think this is kind of in line with our zero trust conversations, right? About accept that there are bad things that can happen to you, like you could get sick or cancer or have bad problems. Face it and go know what you need to know. And if it comes back, great. If it's not, at least you have a treatment plan and you can deal with the problem. So I'm not recommending a name service, but I would say, if you're listening to this and if you care about your health, go get a full body MRI scan where you can. Take some of that FSA money, HSA money, whatever, set aside some dollars and go do it, because you're actually going to figure out where the problem. And now, if I need to go talk to my doctor, like about my shoulder that's had some issues, I can send them those MRIs, and there we go. I'm already that much further ahead of the process. Totally worth it. So that's my 2 cents. I think it's great to share with people. This is where technology can benefit us, in my opinion. I mean, if you really think about it, if you were getting these types of services done, and then you also had your blood work done every 6 months, you'd have a pretty good understanding of what's going on with your physical health, and you can be proactive. So, especially once you're over 40, man, because the downhill slide picks up speed. I'm staring down the barrel of not being 40 for much longer. So, yeah, there you go. So there you go. I share my medical information with people out online. Who cares? If it helps somebody, good, big deal. HelpNet security. This is not an encouraging bit of data here. So average data breach cost jumped to 4.88 million. Collateral damage has increased. IBM has released its annual cost of a data breach, which you should go to read. I'll put the links to that at the end of this, revealing the global average cost of a data breach reached 4.88 million in 2024. Woo! As breaches grow more disruptive and further expand demands on cyber teams. Breach cost increased from 10% from the prior year, the largest yearly jump since the pandemic. So not good there either. As 70% of breached organizations reported that the breach caused significant or a very significant disruption. AI-powered prevention pays off. So more organizations face severe staffing shortages compared to the prior year, and observed an average 1.76 million in higher breach costs than those who did not have their SOC effectively staffed. So the long and short of that there is to either staff up a SOC or get an MSSP. 40% of breaches involve data stored across multiple environments. Not shocking. Public, private cloud, on-prem, etc. These breaches cost more than 5 million on average and took the longest to identify, typically 283 days, because multi-cloud, multi-confusion, hard to see, hard to know. Yeah. Shortages in security staffing increased the cost of breaches, which I just said. And the report found that 67% of organizations deployed security AI and automation, a 10% jump from the year prior. 20% stated they used some form of Gen AI security tools. Interestingly, organizations that employed those type of tools were able to contain an incident on average 98 days faster than organizations that did not use those. So there's your proof in the pudding. Machine learning, applied artificial intelligence, those types of things can be very good, very useful. There's actual data. So check out that report. Lawfare has got this interesting article about the CrowdStrike outage and market-driven brittleness. So interesting thing here. I think the CrowdStrike thing really just revealed our giant soft white underbelly, honestly. This catastrophe is yet another example of how brittle global internet infrastructure is. It's completely, deeply interconnected and filled with single points of failure. Yep. As we experienced last week, a single problem in a small piece of software can take large swaths of the internet and global economy offline. The brittleness of modern society isn't confined to tech. We can see it in many parts of our infrastructure. Absolutely. Food, electricity, finance, transportation. The more we connect things, the more failure we can expect. This is often a result of globalization and consolidation, but not always. In information technology, brittleness also results from the fact that hundreds of companies, none of which you've heard of, each perform a small but essential role in keeping the internet running. CrowdStrike is one of those companies. This brittleness is a result of market incentives. There you go. In enterprise computing, as opposed to personal computing, a company that provides computing infrastructure to enterprise networks is incentivized to be as integral as possible, to have deep access into their customers' networks as possible, and to run as leanly as possible. So this is a really great article. Those are all like the key factors that lead to these sort of cataclysmic issues that we're dealing with. And I don't use the word cataclysm lightly. Like the CrowdStrike stuff, I think it was 5,000 Delta flights were canceled, caused outages on a whole bunch of systems, 8-point-something million computers, 5 billion in lost revenue, whatever. But it shows what cascading failure really looks like, from one company basically having a big issue to take down that much of the internet. It's concerning. We're not doing things correctly when we have these large single points of failure. On top of that, here's what Delta CEO said about the outage. He said it cost his airline $500 million. Woo. Yeah. So Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastion said Wednesday that the massive IT outage earlier this month that stranded thousands of customers will cost Delta $500 million. Bastion said the figures includes but not just lost revenue. The tens of millions of dollars per day in compensation for hotels over a period of 5 days. Delta didn't disclose exactly how many refunds and reimbursements requested processed, but a spokesman said it was in the thousands. The airline canceled over 5,000 flights, more than it had in all of 2019 in the wake of the outage through July 25th, which was sparked by a botched CrowdStrike software update and took thousands of Microsoft systems offline. The company had to manually reset 40,000 servers. Oof. Yeah. So there's interesting stuff to know. I mean, yikes. Now, following on to that, and this will be the last thing I say about CrowdStrike, but SentinelOne CEO has a pretty good article in CRN that talks about how this is not just an honest mistake. This goes down into the issues you face with the kernel and the way that the process goes to do those things. Like, it's a pretty well-written article about the issues that you face. So let me just read a couple things here that I think it's worth taking away. And this is CRN talking to the reporter here. So in your view, how unusual is it for security vendors to have access to the Windows kernel? Kernel-based protection is nothing new, but the problem is the pervasiveness of code that has been put in the kernel, which is against best practices. Now, that's a good point, but here's my response to this is, how many security vendors out there have access to the kernel? Most of them. So that's something to note and take away here. And this is the responder, the CEO from SentinelOne saying this here. As someone who's been doing this for 10 years, it's very clear that you want to minimize the amount of code you put into the kernel. That's the most sensitive part of the operating system, and that is what the operating system vendors will tell you. When you put code in the kernel, you need to have it tested and reviewed by the operating system vendor, which is what Microsoft typically wants people to do. Every change must go through a review process. What you're seeing here is a complete bypass of that kernel vetting process. It creates this cloud to kernel connection, which is just very dangerous. In his words, it's unheard of, upends the operating system process for review and for protection. So there's some things to pay attention to there, but I would also argue that if you went and looked at the majority of endpoint vendors, security solution providers, and all those folks that are going to be out there at Black Hat next week that do things on machines, many of them have that exact same configuration and that exact same control plane to go on and do those things in machines. So does that mean that just because it happened to CrowdStrike, it won't happen to others? I think that that's something worth asking. Yeah. So read this article. It's really solid as far as his approach to what they're saying and how it makes sense. It's a good one. Okay, so I did want to talk about this Axios article, the deepfakes parody loophole. So if you're not familiar with it, I'll put the link to it at the end of this, but Musk, who runs X or Twitter, whatever the fuck you want to call it, he put out a tweet recently that was a deepfake video of Kamala Harris. Now, I am not into politics. I think two-party systems suck. I think most politicians are corrupt as hell anyway. They pretty much are liars. It's also, if you just watch what's happened in the last couple of weeks with the VP pick for Trump and the flip-flop of Harris doing her things. Like, if you ever want to see politicians doing gymnastics, that's what's been going on. That's how you know how full of shit all of them are. But anyway, Musk put this video out, and it's pretty well done. And it's basically Kamala Harris, her voice, talking about how inept she is and how bad she is at doing her job. And, you know, she talks about being a deep state puppet and all these other things and whatever. So whatever your view on those two is beside this. But the whole thing that concerns me, Elon Musk runs companies. He's got 200 million followers on Twitter, X, whatever. And he's someone that most people would at least take a second to listen to just because he's done some interesting things, PayPal and blah, blah. So isn't that a risk? And where this goes sideways is you can claim First Amendment. Like, I can say whatever I want to say, especially as a private citizen. That's one of the beauties of the First Amendment, being a citizen of this great country. But there's risk here. Like, there's risk. And this is a deep fake that was just kind of made as a joke. Like, you could tell that it's a parody if you're not an idiot. But there are people who might take this way more seriously. And what if they had said other things? What if this was slightly more malevolent or malicious in their thing? So let's read about the deepfake parody piece here. So, blah, blah, blah. So election year parodies have been online staples for decades. So sure, that's happened in the past. It's just a thing. On the pre-YouTube internet of 2004, Jib Jab made videos about George Bush and John Kerry. In 2008, humorous attached photorealistic Barack Obama and John McCain heads into bodies for a breakdance competition. Saturday Night Live makes fun of them all the time. Actor comedian Sarah Cooper struck a chord in 2020 with her lip syncing to Trump recordings, make it look like a woman of color was delivering the president's tirades. Well, so okay, it's parody, right? But parody can be dangerous. And here's Axios Arjun. So they say those who rely on the parody loophole to protect their speech will usually argue that it's obvious, quote, obvious, their work is intended to amuse rather than deceive, and that's frequently the case. However, widely accessible generative AI programs can now create lifelike audio and video of public figures saying and doing things they never actually said and did. As a result, parodies look and sound more realistic than ever before, and much of the public still has not adjusted to whether or not those things are factually accurate, true. The widening parody loophole is an open freeway for misinformation and fakery. The other side of this whole thing, so far in 2024, deepfakes haven't turned into a widespread problem, but it's very, very possible. There are people who want to believe in conspiracy theories and are especially picky about the evidence they embrace. Much of online discourse is performed and consumed as a game of trolling today. And that's basically what happens with, these different things. I think there was a video or comment about JD Vance having a furniture fetish, which is weird, but okay. So the bottom line here, the public sphere in America has always left room for political mockery, but AI is making it increasingly tough to establish a boundary between election year humor and malicious fraud. Now, I'll throw the link to the video in here. Just look at it and tell me that you immediately get that this is parody, because I don't know that you could. Like you look at it and for probably a good 10 or 15 seconds, you're like, is this a campaign video? Until they start saying stuff that no person would ever say about themselves. But it wouldn't be hard to manipulate these types of things. So dangerous, I would argue, especially from someone that has 200 million followers. Because again, play the numbers. If there's 200 million followers and 1% of 200 million do something malicious, that's bad. That's a lot of people. So yeah. Okay, so and I always like to try and do things in real time to give people an idea of just how easy this stuff is. There's an article from Abnormal Security talking about how many, they call it the quadrillion report. Cyber threat benchmarks cover nearly 150 million compromised credential pairs. Now that sounds like it's crazy, but in reality, I used the GPT that does dorking. And while I'm not doing anything malicious, if you run a very specific query, I found a whole bunch of files that are exposed by people's misconfigured G Suites that have the term passwd.txt. Well, guess what those files contain? Passwords and usernames. And I'm not talking about one or two. I'm talking about a few hundred, near 1,000 of these. So that's not good. And you could go further down this. Like if you build dorks to go look for, username dot whatever and blah, blah, blah. Like I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but it's not hard to figure it out. The ability to leverage credentials to cause compromise is mind-bogglingly easy. And if we're not ahead of this, we're behind it. I just be aware that that's how this is going. And if you don't have a good IAM program in place, go fix that first. If you're not taking care of identities and non-human identities, usernames, passwords, biometrics, all that stuff, like just pump the brakes and take care of that first, because it's so critical and so crucial. And it's not that hard. I mean, if nothing else, block people from getting to stuff that they shouldn't get to. Or don't, and continue to be the, people that are the slow gazelles, because that's a thing too. Yeah. I thought this article was interesting as far as it's on CNBC. The personal cybersecurity concierge is a new perk and need among the wealthy. This is from Ellen Shang. High-profile hacking cases like Jeff Bezos' home and Bill Gates and Elon Musk's Twitter accounts highlight in recent years how vulnerable wealthy individuals can be to cyber attacks. Executives are turning to cybersecurity concierge services for a higher level of defense. Let's see. So, while companies are spending heavily on cybersecurity, personal home devices are generally less protected, making them easier to crack. And despite their sizable assets and growing threat of cyber attacks, family offices and wealthy families don't think of themselves as targets because hacking's rarely publicized. And this is a quote from Bill Roth, the CEO of Hard Target. Now the low-hanging fruit are high net worth families, some of which have the resources of big companies with hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, and they're not very secure. Yeah. There have been big breaches, reputational data grabbing, ransomware, all that stuff that's gone around. Anwar Vizram, the co-founder of Hard Target, recalled how one family reached out after their son encountered an extortion scheme that moved from Tinder to Instagram. The son paid the original $500 ransom, but because it was paid promptly, it piqued the extortionist's interest, who raised the amount to $3,000. By then, the son had shut down all social media accounts, but the extortionist figured out his identity and went to the head of the family, the founder of a wealth management firm, and they went and said, "We want $100,000. So, yeah, pay attention to those things. According to JP Morgan Private Bank 2024 Global Family Office Report, 24% of family offices surveyed said they've been exposed to a cybersecurity breach or financial fraud. 20% of that percent do not have cybersecurity measures in place. So, not smart. So if you're a rich person or someone with a lot of stuff that you don't want to get stolen, or high net worth, or you work with those people, tell them to get serious about their cyber. If they don't, they can expect bad things to happen to them. I mean, you see it happening, you see the trends. I don't know what else is required for folks to act, but it's definitely coming your way. I've been asked recently to do some work with some NFL teams, and there are people who have got way too much money for the things that they do. So, be aware, I guess. There's an article in Forbes about the cybersecurity leadership crisis that is dooming American companies. America's companies have a chronic problem with cybersecurity. That problem has now reached stage 4, spreading out of control with CrowdStrike's mass infected system. Halfway through the summer of 2024, and the scalding impacts of United Health Group and CrowdStrike cyber incidents have now redefined what is truly at stake and just how fragile America's complex digital business systems are. How we long for the summer of 2023 and the tepid waters of the MGM and Caesars cybersecurity incidents. But why are these incidents persisting and also getting worse? It's almost as if we're focused on the symptoms instead of curing the disease. I would agree with that 1,000%. And America's cybersecurity disease is being caused by a colossal leadership failure in the corporate boardroom. Ouch, way to sting them. Until this disease is addressed, the symptoms will persist, but some aren't convinced the boardroom leadership on cybersecurity matters, and they're working to make sure it stays that way. So here's a quote from Hugh Thompson, the chair of the RSA conference, the largest cybersecurity conference in the world, said, CEOs should be more demanding about adding cybersecurity expertise in the boardroom. CEOs should want and need someone in the governance role behind them as part of that narrative, but also to provide themselves with as many tools as possible. And here's the thing to take away, right? The board literally is a control that can be leveraged. And this is a quote from Thompson as well. Without a cybersecurity directorate expertise, they are weak and leave control to the CEO. Leadership matters, or so we are told, but it's frequently absent in the boardroom around cybersecurity. Part of the problem is that boardroom and business leaders are being erroneously told by regulators and others that risk is some kind of universal concept, and they do not need a director of cybersecurity expertise to help govern the board. The SEC even told them this in their 2023 cybersecurity disclosure rules. And here's the quote from that particular publication. And this is the SEC's doc here. So we are persuaded that effective cybersecurity processes are designed and administered largely at the management level, and that directors with broad-based skills and risk management strategy often effectively oversee management's efforts without specific subject matter expertise. No, wrong, bad way to do it, incorrect, choke yourself, don't touch my hand, that type of stuff. You need people that know what they're doing in this space. In the words of Warren Buffett, risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. Many boards don't know what they're doing in cybersecurity. Having director cybersecurity expertise in the boardroom immediately changes that. Yeah, so that's what you should deal with. The research firm from Virginia Tech identified the following positive and negative business impacts associated with the issue of directors for cyber directors in the boardroom. So lack of director cybersecurity expertise leads to superficial check the box oversight. Well, God, we haven't seen any of that, right? Nobody's ever pencil whipped one of those things. Boards without cybersecurity expertise rely too heavily on the CISO, which can create a circular oversight environment that lacks independence or even encourage the CISO to water down problematic issues. Yes, seen it. It's the thing. It happens all the time. Director cybersecurity expertise can strengthen the effectiveness of the CISO with the board and the C-suite. The presence of a director of cybersecurity with expertise enables directors to provide proactive value-added oversight that would not be possible without it. So the long and short of it is, if you're in a boardroom, you better have people on that know what the hell they're doing in cyber. The SEC is getting involved. The IRS is getting involved, more law enforcement, whatever else. And just for your general business practices, bring someone on that knows, even if it's just a consultant, bring on somebody that can be an independent third party or someone that's outside of the bounds of being controlled by the company to give you advice. I mean, you do that in sales, you do that in all these other orgs, whatever else. Why wouldn't you do it in something as critical as cybersecurity? The days of leadership being able to say, we didn't know, are going away. You're going to be held liable for this. I can promise you that. Luckily, some of the stuff that I've written up on negligence in cyber is finding its way up to the hill, and maybe they'll actually do something with it. There's no excuse to not have someone on the board or in the boardroom that knows what the hell they're doing in cyber, other than you're just trying to not deal with it. So don't be an organization that does that. Get a consultant outside, somebody, whatever. You're doing things for the purposes of growing and generating business. Cyber, if done correctly, can help grow and generate business. It's sort of tangential, and it's not like a super direct line. In some ways it is, but the whole point is you need to do cyber correctly. It is core and key to business. Get a person in the boardroom that knows what the fuck they're doing. That's my 2 cents. Anyway, if you're going out to Black Hat, be safe, have fun, whatever. I won't be there. I'm doing charity golf stuff because it's way more fun than sweating my ass off in the desert. So I won't be there. You guys enjoy it. And, I think this is the first one I've missed in like nearly 2 decades, but I literally am not worried about it at all. I'd like to see people, but I have no desire to go to the face of the sun in August. You know what I mean? Like, whew, it's going to be hot out there. So y'all be safe, be careful. If I can help you with something, please reach out to me. As always, stay smart, stay safe, stay secure. In Vegas, stay hydrated. I'll catch you on the next one.